one and only man, Alistair Campbell, Peter Mandelson, all of that crowd, they have changed Britain forever, right? We're reading this morning that 1 in 6 people living here right now was born somewhere else. Now, I'm not xenophobic. I love the world. I love every single country I've ever been to. There are plenty of places that I wouldn't want to live, but Britain is by far and away the greatest country in the world, and I don't mind saying that. And, of course, there will be people going, oh, look at him, he's such a xenophobe, he's such a racist, you know. I'm not a racist, OK? I have plenty of reason to celebrate the world. I have plenty of reason to love people who come from all sorts of parts of the world. But what I don't love is people who come to this country in order to be criminals, in order to commit crime, in order to make our lives more miserable rather than better, right? We're going to talk now to Rafi Haidel-Mankou, who is historian, broadcaster and senior fellow at the New Culture Forum. He's a man who knows a thing or two about the immigration problem in this country because, judging from the census that we're seeing on the front page of the Times this morning, it turns out that 1 in 6 people from another country, born in another country, was boosted by the fact that Romanian people have been coming here since the last census in 2011, when there were 89,000 or 80,000 Romanians living here. There are now something like 539,000, so almost 500,000 more Romanians living here than there were in 2011. Now, you can't tell me that this has not changed forever, the way that Britain is, because it does. Let's have a look at this.
Over the past 25 years, since the election of New Labour in '97, Britain's undergone a profound demographic shift that has fundamentally changed the character of towns and cities across the kingdom. The fabric of many of these communities has been altered to such an extent that they're often unrecognisable to the generations that once called them home. From the old mill towns of the north to the heart of our capital city, this demographic change has created parallel societies of segregated populations whose daily lives pass with little or no interaction with wider society. Now, this situation is quite without precedent in our long island story. We've had more immigration to this country in the last 25 years than in the last 2,000 years combined. So whenever people tell you Britain's always been a nation of immigrants, no.
Well, that's an interesting take, isn't it? Because we are told that on a very regular basis. Let's talk to Rafi now. Rafi, a very good morning to you. Welcome to the show.
Hello there, Mike.
Extraordinary. Very interesting what you said there, but also even more extraordinary than that, the size of the Romanian population in this country alone should be cause for concern. And I'm not saying that because I don't like people from Romania. I just think it's a very, very big increase. You know, to go from 80,000 people from Romania to over 500,000 in the past 10 years is remarkable.
Yes, when I saw that stat yesterday, I just immediately thought back to 2014. You remember when Keith Vaz went to Luton Airport to show how few Romanians and Bulgarians were coming into the country, 2014 being the year that they were allowed unfettered access to the labour market. And just because on that first day there were only a handful arriving, the left and the mainstream media gleefully poked fun at those of us who said that this was just the trickle before the tidal wave would come in. And of course, we've seen that. And of course, one can completely understand why people from poorer nations would want to come to a richer nation. This is no slight against them in any way whatsoever. But no society can sustain such rapid change over such a short period. The problem here isn't immigration, it's mass migration.
Yeah.
And mass migration has been completely without parallel. And now, as you now say, 1 in 6 people in this country are born abroad. And of course, what that does do is the country needs time to slowly assimilate immigrant population. My own family are immigrant populations. My mother's family came here in 1940, attached to the Polish government in exile. My father's family from Kenya in the 1950s and 60s. And they came to countries where they were able to fully assimilate and become fully incorporated into British society. But once you have such large numbers, it's only instinctive that people will form ghettos, just the same way that the English do in the Costa del Sol. And when you have a large number of people together, they won't assimilate. And so you have parts of this country where students actually believe that they're living in Muslim countries and that Britain is 90% Asian.
Yeah.
Because all that they see around them in places, in parts of Burnley and Birmingham and Bradford, are people like themselves.
And these are the stories that dare not speak their name, aren't they? Because if you raised any of this with particularly left-leaning politicians, They sort of want to shoo you out the door. They don't want you to talk about it. They don't want you to say, I walked down the street in Ealing in West London the other day, which looked like I was in the middle of Damascus. You know, I'm sorry, but that's what it looked like. Every single shop had Arab writing on it. Every single place that was a restaurant or a cafe seemed to be occupied by people who would seemingly came from the Middle East. You know, if you walk down a high street in many parts of this country, that's what you see. But you're not allowed to say that because apparently that would be racist. And it's not racist, it's just the truth.
Exactly. Do you remember the flat Nigel Farage had when he said people have the right to ride a bus and hear the English language being spoken? And, you know, just north of Ealing, you've got, you know, Brent and Wembley. 22% of households in Wembley and Brent don't speak any English at home. There's no command of the English language, and almost a quarter of residences there. Look, for years we've been told that diversity is a wonderful thing, and yes, to a certain degree it is. But the extreme diversity we're seeing does have a darker side. And it's more than just having ghettos. It's because a lot of these segregated populations serve almost as petri dishes for the cultivation of cultural practices that we in the West will find abhorrent. And for example, we know full well from research on the Pew Institute and others that Muslims are more likely to hold extremist views if they live in one of these segregated communities. We know also that there's been a rise also in things like the Metropolitan Police are now being given lessons in witchcraft, for example, if you can imagine, because of the rise of those amongst segregated communities coming from Africa, for example.
Right.
The female genital mutilation, honor killings. There are a lot of things happening within these corners, and nobody is brave enough, as we've seen with the Rotherham grooming scandal. No one's actually brave enough to actually raise the flag on this.
No, and it's a terrible state of affairs. I mean, I'm looking at the figures again from the census. 42% of the 10 million born abroad have arrived in the past decade, right, alone. India remains the most common country of birth outside the UK. Poland second, Pakistan third, Romania fourth. So I haven't seen the figures for Poland and Pakistan, but if they're bigger than Romania's figure, which is 500,000, that's an awful lot of people. And again, you referred back to the Blair years when, remember when Blair opened the doors to Polish people and he predicted that 15,000 people would come and 1 million came. And many of them have gone back, and many of them came here and sought work. And in fact, you know, I could attest to the fact that I had some very, very nice Polish people plastering a home that I bought in Scotland, and they were very good at it. You know, I don't know whether they're still here, but what I do know is that a lot of them had their kids here and then received child benefit having gone back to Poland.
Well, of course, and you raise an important point here, and this is back also that we simply don't have the infrastructure. So on a practical level, when you have only 40-odd thousand houses being built, but you have almost 10 times that number coming in gross to the country, it's no surprise that we have a housing shortage when we have vastly more numbers of people coming in than we are producing houses. If you want to explain part of the reason for GP surgeries being having difficulty getting an appointment there, school places for your children, getting an appointment at the dentist, immigrants who can't get physicians in the GP, so they're going to the A&E for mild cases to have that done. There's a huge knock-on effect of all this. But let's just, I mean, you raised an important point, 5 million in the last decade. So we are told that Britain's always been a nation of immigrants, and it is utter rot. You know, under the Romans, we had about 3% of this country was born abroad. Under the Normans and the Vikings, we reached a peak of about 5%. But then for the next 1,000 years, only about 0.5% of the nation was foreign born. In 1851, it was 0.5%. In 1901, it was 1.5%. 1951, 4%. 2001, 8%. 2011, it was 12%. Now we're at 16%. I mean, this is simply completely unmanageable.
Yeah, and I mean, interestingly, what you say about the sort of ghetto aspect of it as well, because what you didn't see, I mean, British people travel all around the world, and there's plenty of Brits in all sorts of different countries, from, you know, Qatar to Australia. But what you don't see is sort of British ghettos. People don't go to other countries and insist on living like a Briton would live in Britain. You know, they go to another country.
I'm not sure, though. Actually, I think it's human instinct. The old adage was always, when two Englishmen meet, they form a club immediately. And you just have to go to Dubai, and you have the English expat community there. You go to Spain, the Costa del Sol.
Yes, but what I mean by that, though, what I mean by that, Rafi, is they don't behave in Dubai as they would behave if they were in London. You know, because there are certain restrictions and local rules and sort of, you know, habits that they perhaps would leave behind because they're living in a foreign country. We don't seem to have that here.
Yeah, I agree. But the point I want to make, though, is I want people to understand that it's not racist to say what's happening. It's actually human instinct for people to want to congregate with their own kind. And it's human instinct to actually want to speak your own language. And if you don't need to make the effort to speak a foreign language, why would you? So that's what the problem is we have with having mass immigration. There's no incentive for people to actually integrate.
Well,
into the
as
community.
long as hospitals continue to produce pamphlets and information in 55 different languages, and as long as courtrooms manage to supply you with a translator every time you get arrested for anything, then that's never going to change, is it?
But this is a much more important point, exactly. Not only with the provision of services in different languages, but also we're constantly told to celebrate multiculturalism, and we constantly elevate other cultures at the expense of the majority culture, the British culture. We're told to be ashamed of our history. We're told to decolonize our curriculum. We're told that everything that white men are bad, there's a tear down the statues of your heroes. So how can people coming to this country buy into Britain when all the messages that they're getting around them is that Britain is bad and that the civilization is terrible and that wherever they've come from is somehow superior? Although why would you be coming here if your own country was so superior to Britain?
Yeah, exactly right. And we keep being told again by the left that the place is full of racists and it's a terrible place for people to come and we should stop persecuting them. Well, by my reckoning, if that was the case, nobody would be coming here, but everybody seems to be.
Yeah, and also we wouldn't be opening the door so widely if we were such a racist country. But actually, you know, if you want to see racism, go to China, right, and see how they treat black people. Go to India, for example, and then you will see true racism. A lot of the countries these people are coming from are actually the racist countries. And we know full well from surveys that have been done that Britain and Spain are the two least racist countries in Europe. And that's judged by asking people in polls, how would you feel if somebody of a different race lived next door to you? And the Brits and the Spanish were the most open to that, along with the, not unsurprisingly, the Anglosphere, Canadians, Australians, and also South Brazil, actually, which also is understandable. So this idea that we're a racist country, we are the least racist country in Europe, people need to understand that, or just look at any football match.
Yes. Well, I have to say, if Spain is an example of a non-racist country in Europe, then they're in a very bad place because Europe is a lot worse than Spain. Spain isn't that great either. Listen, great to talk to you, Rafi. Thank you very much indeed. Rafi Heidel, Manku, historian, broadcaster, senior fellow at the New Culture Forum. Let's talk about this, right? Because nobody does. There will be nobody else talking about this today because they're ashamed, aren't they? The BBC won't be talking about it. How about this from Mark? He says, the BBC live in cloud cuckoo land. We all know they have a left-wing narrative. They ask stupid questions and during lockdowns had no consideration for the cost of living and the everyday person who had their businesses shut. They pushed the lockdown. Absolute disgrace. Well, quite. That's exactly right. 0344 499 1000 is the number. We'll talk about this. This is Talk TV.